And here we go. We have liftoff. Propulsion continues to be normal.
RCPA chamber pressure looks good.
Doubling up. Roger, with planet.
Water towers fly! Yes!
Tango down to nominal.
Flight downside SPD off. Bring in SPD off. Off. It's orange!
Oh my god! Oh my god!
Decollage. Put that in the big bag, Jingle.
343 unfolds to go.
Indeed.
We rise together, back to the moon and beyond.
This methane would be igniting in the flare, correct?
Yikes. You bet. We don't need any more of these.
Good evening. You are taking a live look right now at Space Launch Complex 40 at the Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida, where for the third time, SpaceX is attempting to launch the Nusantara Lima mission for Indonesia. I am Sawyer Rosenstein. I am once again your host for this, what appears to be cursed mission. But we'll talk about the delays in a bit, but hopefully we will see it leap off the pad 57 minutes and 17 seconds from now. That's what they say, as I see in chat there. Third time's the charm, yes. And to add to the charm, there's three of us on commentary as usual. So that includes Alex. How's it going, Alex?
Yeah, we're back here again on a third attempt. Kind of four-ish, I guess, because they seemingly tried yesterday, but then many hours before the attempt, they just scrubbed. And so, yeah, I mean, that was quite interesting. Let's see what happens today. So far, it seems like they are still counting down. And this might actually be the first time they're trying to launch at the opening of the window, which is quite interesting as well. So we'll see.
We will see, and we will also hear from out in the field, Max. How's it going, Max?
Good evening, everybody. Yes, honestly, I wouldn't say this is take 3. I'd say that this is take 4 because I feel like yesterday counts because I was about to get set up here and then got word that it wasn't going to happen. So take 4 for this mission, and it's taken up most of the week. So hopefully we can get Falcon 9 off the ground at the opening of the window today. And honestly, based on what the Merc 1 eyeballs are telling us, that looks pretty promising.
Yeah, let's definitely not try for tomorrow. Let's hope we can get this thing off the ground today.
Yes, please.
And of course, pushing the buttons, pulling the levers, as you see there in the corner of the screen, is Kevin. And of course, as always, if you have any questions, you can tag us at NASASpaceflight or at NSF, and we will do our best to answer as many of your questions as we can. Of course, the main one, Max, being the weather, as we take a look at some of these views from our port, from Port Canaveral and the fleet cams at Rusty's and all the rest of our shots here. Max, how is the weather?
Weather right now, as I said just a bit ago, is looking, all things considered, especially considering how the first half of the week looked, weather is looking pretty promising today. There is a bit of a breeze coming out of the north, and there are some low-level clouds, but there is more blue sky visible than there has been pretty much in combination of every single afternoon of Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday combined. So things are looking good, at least visually. Regarding the actual weather forecast from the 45th Weather Squadron at the Patrick Space Force Base here in Cocoa Beach, there is a 45% chance of a favorable weather during today's almost two-hour launch window. The primary concerns being the cumulus cloud rule and the surface electric fields rule. Notably, the anvil cloud rule concern is missing, and honestly, that is quite a relief to see because the weather forecast for the past 3 days has looked, I think, subpar or suboptimal, I think is a more appropriate way to put it. But lots of sunshine out here right now, and hopefully things will continue to trend in the right direction.
Yes, 45% favorable is the highest favorability percentage that we have seen so far with this launch. So things looking good from the views of our cameras here. And of course, we will see in just a little bit if SpaceX is going to proceed with this first T0 53 minutes ish from now. Of course, we still have to talk about the payload on board. Alex, you want to talk about again? I feel like I've asked you this 60,000 times already. Can you talk about Nusantara Lima?
Yeah, so it is a high throughput satellite communications that it's gonna go out to geostationary orbit. Falcon 9 will be putting it into a transfer orbit, this sort of oval shaped orbits that sort of the apogee is high up there, close to geostationary orbit, but the perigee is still at low Earth orbit. Then the satellite will use its own electric propulsion. It's gonna take probably a few months because that is a very low thrust propulsion, but it's very it's a very highly efficient propulsion system. It doesn't need as much mass of tanks and like usually it's using like xenon or something like that. So it's very lightweight. And so that allows them to be able to have really big satellites carried into these geostationary orbits. In this case, the satellite is like 6 metric tons in mass, so it's a very huge satellite. It's got again, it's one of these that are dubbed high throughput satellites because they are essentially fitted with really huge antennas and different transponders and different bands of frequencies and whatnot that are allowed that will allow it to be able to transmit at really high speeds. I believe this one in particular is aiming for 160 gigabit per second capacity, essentially between all of its different transmissions and whatnot. But that's one of the big things of these bigger satellites is precisely that they are fitted with these huge antennas that allow them to be able to do multiple things at really high throughput compared to other kinds of geostationary satellites. But that's one of those. This is for Indonesia. This is for Pacific Satellite Nusantara. There have been a few of these already launched on Falcon 9, such as Nusantara Satu, also known as PSN-6. PSN standing, of course, for Pacific Satellite Nusantara. That's the name of the company that operates these satellites. And then they also launched as well Satria a few years ago on Falcon 9 as well. All of them being Indonesian satellites. So yeah, not the first rodeo for this company to launch these satellites on Falcon 9, and definitely not the first rodeo for this booster because it's flying for the 23rd time today. And it's going to be landing offshore on the drone ship, of course. Excuse me, ashore from Gravitas. I was thinking of course, I Still Love You, which is on the west coast, but no, this is the east coast. So this one is landing on ashore from Gravitas.
Yeah, definitely wrong coast. By the way, do you want to take us through the missions this booster has done while it's on the screen?
Yeah, you can see there all the customer missions: Crew 6, O3B, Power B, USSF 124, and Bluebird 125, and then a bunch of other Starlink missions, beginning with 6-4, 6-8, 6-16, 6-31, 6-46, 6-53, 6-60, 10-2, 10-6, 10-13, 6-76, 12-6, 12-9, 12-16, 6-72, 6-84, 12-26, and 1026. Today it's gonna do another customer launch to sort of break the pace there with all of those Starlink missions, I guess. But yeah, lots of satellites that you can see there already. 437. So with this mission it'll be 438 once it's launched. So there you go.
Also, shout out to Kevin for finding a way to get all of the Starlinks listed on there individually as opposed to just and 18 other Starlink missions. Yeah, you can see some of those stats on NASASpaceflight, which of course is a website and an app that you can use to find all of the latest info on launches, times, learn about these missions, find some of these stats, and find out for yourself. And of course, if you are using the improved mobile app, certain launches you will actually see a virtual trajectory with data powered by Flight Club that you can use to kind of see where this launch is going to be. Which, Max, if people do want to see this launch, what is the trajectory for tonight?
So because Falcon 9 is heading off to a geostationary transfer orbit, it is essentially traveling straight east. So whether you are north or south of the launch pad, you should have an equally amazing view depending on how far from the pad you are. I would say the prime viewing area for this launch is going to be in the Cape Canaveral or Cocoa Beach area, but that's not to say if you are north of us in, say, New Smyrna Beach or Daytona Beach, you will not have a good view. You will. still. It's just you are a bit farther away, so it may take a bit more time for Falcon 9's, I guess, light to reach you. So either way, it is going to be a spectacular visual feast, hopefully tonight, assuming the weather plays ball. Or plays nice, because it is launching about 27 minutes or so after sunset, which is prime jellyfish territory. And it has been a minute since we have had a jellyfish mission or visual mission here from the Space Coast of Florida, because the West Coast gets them all the freaking time, it seems like nowadays, and we get like nothing. So kind of refreshing to see one from here. Hopefully we are not jinxing it, but as you can see there is a zone out in the Pacific Ocean over there south of Mexico, and that is where Falcon 9's upper stage will deorbit and hopefully splash down. So fingers crossed all goes well tonight, and assuming the weather is or stays as it is now, for those of us at least who are local to the Space Center here, both the KSC and the Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, we should have a great view tonight. And as we can see here from the weather board, everything is green apart from the wind. That is a bit of a concern tonight, but as it is right now, nothing too strong, and certainly nothing that would interfere with Falcon 9's ability to get off the ground and get on the way to orbit. So at the moment, weather is looking good, and hopefully it stays that way. But whether you are north or south of the pad, it should be equally spectacular, assuming the weather plays ball.
Whether you're north or south?
Ha ha ha.
I'll give you credit for that one. But yeah, anyway, it would be nice to actually get to see the jellyfish effect, as you were pointing out, which we were talking about this before we went on the air. With a Starlink mission, 25 minutes after is really pushing the edge of when you might be able to see it. But this one is going into a slightly higher trajectory because it's going to geostationary transfer orbit versus the much lower, 150, 200 kilometers-ish that we're used to seeing when the engines shut down after the first burn. So
Correct.
hopefully that plays well tonight. Let's see here. Let me thank some people, and we'll get to your questions. Otto, thank you for becoming a PadRat member. Raptor Engine, thank you for becoming a PadRat member. I love the names our community has. Robert Keeper upgrading to Red Team membership, and Hal Snyder upgrading to the highest level of support that NSF offers here on YouTube, Flight Engineer. Thank you so much for that. You get the Discord. You get your name in the larger font at the end of the NSF Lives and the Flame Trenches, which, don't forget, Flame Trench is tomorrow. And of course, if we ever build a parking lot, you will get a VIP reserved space with your name on it. So thank you so much for that. And we promise it's not going to be like Disney where you have to park 20 miles away. It'll be closer than that. And Sherry, thank you as well for the $10 super chat. Very much appreciate it. So let's get to some questions here. Here's one from Mechzilla, and I'll throw this to you, Alex. They're asking, when a flight is S-worded, as they put it, what will they do to the rocket between its launches?
Well, I'm guessing they probably inspect a few things, look through the data, especially if there's been any propellant load and things like that, like we saw the other day. Then they probably also go through the data and make sure that everything was in check, because of course you loaded propellants on the rocket, right? Things got very frosty, very, especially the COPVs, for example, probably were also loaded as well. So all of those things need to be checked out, need to make sure that there was nothing wrong with the rocket or anything like that, or the ground systems. And so that's probably part of the process that they do. Other than that, I'm not sure if they do anything other than, I guess, also refilling the commodities on the ground tank farm, right? Because I guess, some of that can also boil off as well, especially for the liquid oxygen stuff. Some of it gets lost to boil off. So then you get to, also deal with that. But yeah, apart from all of those things, I don't think there's much to be done. But yeah, that's pretty much what it will seem to me, at the very least, to be what they do.
Right, and obviously, yesterday, whether it was weather or very likely they saw something on the rocket and were like, you know what, let's wait. Obviously doing their checks, doing their inspections after these attempts. And that's the other thing also. It's not like Starbase where we could see all the public roads, given that this is, our cameras are located on government property here. or at least inside NASA there. We don't really get to see a lot of commodity trucks going to Pad 40, which is all the way over at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. So, yeah, the commodity trucks do come rolling in. It's just easier to see them down at Starbase than it is here. Again, like I said, I love the usernames here in our community. I'll get to that question in a moment. We'll actually have Max answer it, but first, hi Max.
Hello.
Can you kind of talk us through our behind-the-scenes setup here of what you got set up for tonight?
Yeah, just have a couple of our usual live stream cameras up here. I have the Panasonic BGH1 off to my left immediately. That is going to be the primary tracking camera for this evening, and that was the super tight focal length you were seeing on your screen just a moment ago. And then to the left of that, we have one more Panasonic broadcast camera, giving y'all a bit of a wider angle for tonight. And behind that, on the other tripod, is my big 60-600 lens from Sigma that I may or may not actually use because I'm still undecided whether or not I should try for a streak shot tonight or if I should go for super tight stills. Unsure, and I only have one camera on me this evening because I've been busy packing and doing a whole bunch of other errands all day, so I only have one camera on me. But TBD, I will probably make that call at around T-minus 10 minutes, depending on what the light and the sky is doing. But yeah, that is what we have set up for tonight. Nothing too crazy. This is our usual setup here, and hopefully the views suffice. But looking good, and hopefully these views will come across well to everybody who's at home.
Yeah, it really is. It is tough because for especially a jellyfish, you can see the wide plume expansion in a streak shot, but you can also really amplify it with, mostly fully zoomed in and see the true jellyfish part of the effect versus the whole course of the jellyfish forming and evolving. So,
The affirmative.
To help you out, Max, there's a poll in chat right now. It says Max Sigma, first off. Super tight stills or streak shot?
Ooh, I like that poll.
Yeah, we'll see what chat thinks, and I'll keep you updated on the results. As of now, there are 73 votes and counting. Let's see here. So anyway, the question I was originally going to ask was from Slick 40. So the launch pad we're looking at right now. Hang on, I'm going to hold on for that question for a second because we do have a hold in the count. So,
oh dear.
That may make your decision a little easier, Max, tonight.
I mean, you'd think, but I could, assuming this goes 15 or 20 minutes later, or even a half hour later, I'm still kind of undecided on what I would do. Depends on what the clouds do. But probably depending on how far this slips, we may or may not be out of the jellyfish zone, unfortunately.
And again, Alex, they have a decent window for this. It's not like they're done for the night now or anything.
Yeah, they were targeting the opening of the window at 7:59 p.m. and they have until 9:56 p.m. Eastern, so nearly 2 hours. And it seems like we have a new T0.
30 minutes. Yep. So 8:29 p.m. Eastern time, 30 minutes after the original planned T0. Of course, we're still here. We're still going to be covering the launch. And now the clock in the upper left has been updated and is accurate on the exact timing here. Let me thank some people because the support has been absolutely spectacular as we wait for this. Mike saying, hoping for a nice view from Kennedy Point. Ooh, fingers crossed for you there. Robert Keeper gifting 10 Red Team memberships. Thank you so much for doing that. Really appreciate it. And if you got one of those memberships, definitely give them a shout out. Elon Tusk becoming a Capcom member, so hopefully we will see you in the Discord. Echo Deal saying, I don't think swords are approved cargo for space. Yeah, probably not. But
not with
I would
that
say,
attitude.
Yeah, fight me on that, just not with swords. And Patrick becoming a Pad Rat member. And I guess now is an appropriate time to ask this question from John Cook. Alex, is there a maximum amount of time a Falcon 9 can be on the pad without launching?
There must be, but if there is, we're probably not even close. There's being Falcon 9s usually on the pad. The The longest that I've seen a Falcon 9 on the pad has been for like 2 weeks, 3 weeks, or something like that. Yeah, we are nowhere near any of those limits, if there's a limit at all. Because I have no idea. Other than maybe avoiding some dodgy weather, it probably can be out there for as long as they want.
Exactly. Yeah, of course, the weather is always the big question, and it seems like the weather remains a question tonight. A reminder that the official forecast was a 45% chance of favorable weather. Although, with it being less wet out there, Max, how long can a Max be out there?
I basically kind of, sort of, not really live here, so I can be out here as long as as we really need.
Did you just do the YMCA?
Maybe.
We need to find a way to do NSF somehow with like YMCA style NSF.
That would be cool. I think the N would be the big. Actually, no, everything but the S. Yeah,
Oh, as a Jets fan, I found a way to do the S. It's kind of like you walk like an Egyptian style.
that's actually a good point.
Yeah. Speaking of a good point, I think this is a good point to take a brief pause here. You could see this shot from Julia, by the way, on the other side of the lagoon there. Clouds are starting to roll in, and it seems a little breezy out there too, Max.
Yeah, but you say that the breeze has gone down pretty extensively since it was when we went live just about 25 or so minutes ago. And especially before then, I think it was gusting anywhere from like 10 to 15 or maybe even 20 knots. There are wind advisories out for both the KSC and the Cape Canaveral Space Force Station tonight. So it seems to have calmed down a bit. That's why this camera is now zoomed in a bit more, and hopefully the wind continues to die down, because camera shake is no bueno. But nothing that would currently stand in the way of a launch tonight, at least from a wind perspective.
Exactly, but obviously there's something because SpaceX paused that count and set a new time. So we are going to pause the commentary and set a new time to return, which is typically when they give the when they do the polling for propellant load, which is about the T-minus 40-minute mark. So if anything changes with the T0, of course you will see it update in the top left corner of the screen. We'll still give you some beautiful views, and DJ KMR will take you out with the music, but we will be back in just a little bit, hopefully, with the launch of Nusantara Lima. Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. At this point, we are now 38 and a half minutes to go until hopefully the launch of Nusantara Lima. We are back with our commentary. Surprised anybody who had us on in the background tab, but welcome back. I am still joined by Alex and Max and Kevin. And at this point, they are at the final T0 of the window. So, Max, how is the weather looking now?
Well, we had our first confirmation of what was the weather issue before via a post from Kiko Donchev, one of the head engineers at SpaceX, I think VP of launch at SpaceX. And he confirmed that the clouds were being a bit of a nuisance today, and the Mark 1 eyeballs are certainly confirming that, or have been confirming that. But at the moment, the breeze has calmed down a bit. There is still some clouds overhead, but not as intrusive or as mean-looking as they were before. So SpaceX obviously thinks that the weather may clear up in time because they have pushed this far ahead towards the very end of the launch window, and they have not called it yet. So it looks like they may be trying to get Falcon 9 off the ground tonight after all.
Yeah, it seems like they're going to try. And I know one of the things that we've been discussing, Alex, is the fact that there is another launch from this pad scheduled for NASA on Sunday as of right now, and what effect this might have on it. So, any ideas on what might happen to the NG-23 mission coming up?
Well, my thinking is if they do go indeed today, which we'll figure it out, I guess, in 37 minutes, maybe less than that if they decide to stand down earlier. One of the things is that if they go at this T0, it will be 2 days and 20 hours turnaround compared to the current time for Cirrus NG-23, which is currently scheduled for this Sunday at 6:11 p.m. Eastern. And so that is quite the short turnaround, even for like a Starlink, for example. Like if this was a Starlink instead of Cygnus or something like that, it will still be quite a quick turnaround. One of the advantages that they have is they don't need to change the Stromback, for example. If it were a Dragon mission, they have to change the top of the Stromback to accommodate for a Dragon. They do have to have late load on Cygnus. They have this special hatch that they fit to the fairing half, right? And so they load Cygnus very close to the launch as it is horizontal on the ground. And so they need at least some time ahead of the launch to be able to do all of that processing. So my gut feeling is that even if it launches today, we're probably going to see some kind of delay. But you know, NASA has had a recent Cargo Dragon launch to the ISS. They just launched a Progress from Kazakhstan as well. The Russians did that just a day ago or so. So there's supplies on the ISS, right? It probably is not a situation where they are in a hurry, perhaps, to get Cygnus up on the station. And given the weather, I mean, they might not even be that well, because it's also another, I guess, another one of these sort of late afternoon, early evening launches, right? So considering the weather in Florida around those times of the day, especially in this time of the year, they probably are not in a super duper hurry, I guess, to also get that off the ground. But I can see a delay, even if today's Nusantara Lima launch happens in 34 minutes and 45 seconds.
But Alex, why are they choosing to launch at these stupid hours? Why didn't they just launch earlier or later in the day and get good?
Well, it's just part of the mission restrictions. Geosynchronous transfer orbit launches are less constrained than when they, for example, go to the ISS and things like that, because those have to be timed when the orbit of the ISS goes above the station. Above the launch pad, not the station. And so you've got this sort of instantaneous launch window that you have to hit. Normally, geosynchronous transfer orbit launches like today's mission with Nusantara Lima, they are a little bit less constrained. For example, there's an actual window instead of being instantaneous, right? There's 2 hours in that window, and they are now targeting the end of that window, 9:56 p.m. Eastern. And so there's at least that, but you could say, well, why isn't the window, I don't know, very early in the morning or very, very late in the night when the weather is probably a little bit better, right? I don't know. There's usually other things at play, right? Things like, for example, the operator. The operator might not be in the right position or the right location in time to be able to call home to the satellite. Because once the satellite is deployed and it starts talking back home, there needs to be folks down on the ground, right? That talk back to the satellite and things like that. The satellite also needs to be able to be in sunlight so that there's power positive and things like that. So there are different constraints that are probably not the ones that you see for, again, an example that Cygnus launched to the ISS, but there are still restrictions, and so it's not like they can launch any other time of the day. They just have this 2-hour window, and they sort of have to go with it. But we'll see.
And at this point now, we are officially on frost watch as we wait to see if propellant load has begun, which that would have started at T-minus 35 minutes, but it does take a couple of minutes for us to be able to see the condensation outside the vehicle. Max, Alex, either of you seeing anything right now?
I almost want to say I do, but that could also just very well be the atmospheric distortion messing with our eyes, where that's maybe, or maybe that's just the white line you were seeing there at the very bottom of the LOX tank is where SpaceX wiped away some of the soot to inspect one of the weld lines there. So that in combination with the current atmospheric distortion that we're seeing is kind of playing tricks. No, I see vapor there. I definitely see vapor. You guys see that?
At the top of that
Yeah.
white line, yeah.
Okay. They are doing it. They're going for it.
Yep.
All right. So they are going to try for the count. So at this point, obviously they've been committed to this T0 beforehand because this is the final one of the window. But now they are officially committed with tanking underway. So in terms of what we have next in the countdown, right now they'll begin loading the RP1, the rocket propellant 1, and the liquid oxygen, the LOX, into stage 1. Meanwhile, stage 2 will just start with the RP1 load. That will continue until the infamous or famous or notorious, whatever, 20-minute, 20-second vent when they will begin the LOX chill down. And of course, the liquid oxygen load in stage 2 should begin at T-minus 16 minutes or so to go until launch. And there is that timeline that you see there. So we are officially ticking off things on the timeline now, and hopefully taking off towards a launch just over 30 minutes from now. A reminder, as we continue, if you have questions, you could tag us at NSF or at NASASpaceflight, and we'll answer some questions as we go. But I do need to address the super chats that have been coming in for the last 90 minutes here. Patrick saying, I appreciate all the work you all do here. Thank you. Thank you as well. Ace with the sticker and with the $5 super chat. There was the sticker somewhere earlier as well. Amy saying, okay, let's goal, because someone, Kevin, created a goal without telling me. All of a sudden I go to eat and I come back and I look and there's a goal for me to do something cool. Apparently I said I would do something cool. And yeah, so then Amy coming in saying, yes, we want to see Sawyer do something cool. Crispy, oh, here we go. Darth becoming a Capcom member. Capcom gets access to the NSF Discord, in addition to all the awesome member perks right here on YouTube. Crispy, I'm excited to see what cool things we are in for. Crispy also saying, if only more super chats increase launch chances. Here's another one from Crispy saying, by the way, NSF is awesome, but you already knew that. Crispy saying, better be prepping, Sawyer, smiley face. Crispy says, hello, KMR. And guess who this next super chat is from? You want to guess, Alex?
I'm going to say Crispy.
There you go. I'm blanking on this one, but goal reached. Thank you, Crispy, for
Hello,
all
Crispy.
of that. Yes, not Crispy, as in Chris Bergen, Crispy, and not someone with the last name P, just Crispy. So. Thank you for that. All right, here you go, folks. Breaking news. You wanted something cool? This is something cool. I have not shown this off publicly in over a decade, so you can pause it and rewind it on X and YouTube and all of that, but here is my entire list of astronauts that I have met, / cosmonauts, as you see there in no particular order. It is even color-coded, yes. So you've got all the red, you got moon travelers, moonwalkers, and we get into the shuttle era very much here. There's a cosmonaut thrown in there as well. The two Gregs at the end of the program there. Mike Collins in green went to the moon but didn't land. Got some ESA astronauts in there. So Samantha Cristoforetti. And the blue is when we get into the commercial era. So these are people that have flown on commercial vehicles. So I'm not necessarily saying astronauts at that point. That is very much the people who have flown to space per commercial rules there. So there you go. You wanted something cool? How's that for something cool? Does that meet up to the expectations that were set? And there you go. And yes, folks, yes, the top two is Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin. And further down the list, as mentioned, was Mike Collins, which is the entirety of the Apollo 11 crew. Yes. There you go. And again, you can pause and go back through everything and replay it on X and YouTube to check out the full list. There you go. Anyway, thank you everyone for getting us to reach that goal and making me break that out publicly again. Amy also coming in helping to reach that goal, saying bullseye twice. Crispy, a name that I don't know if we've seen much tonight, coming in with 20 gifted red team memberships, 2 separate 10 gifts here, as we take a look at a static fire going on of a stage 2 at McGregor right now. So yeah, this is, I believe, a Falcon second stage ongoing right now live at McGregor. And you can watch these tests live on McGregor Live 24/7 here at NSF.
Hopefully we see one of those in flight soon. Minutes from now.
I sure hope so.
And this is, does this have a nozzle on it then, Alex, or is this the extra stubby?
This doesn't have any nozzle extension. I mean, it has the MVAC nozzle. It's like a very, very short nozzle, regeneratively cooled nozzle. But yeah, the Navium extension nozzle, it is not installed until the second stage is at the launch site. So yeah, and this is a test site at McGregor, SpaceX's own development and test facility in Texas.
Yeah, so it is. That's what I meant by extra stubby, in that it's
I know.
It's a test version, which is really small.
I had to explain to the viewers.
Oh, I know you did. Anyways, that test is going on here. These are quite long burns. Sometimes they will go through an entire, basically, launch sequence with it, right?
Yeah, it sort of depends as well on what purpose they want to test these second stages. Sometimes they run them for the entirety of the length. Lately, they've been trying to like not force them too much, and they've sort of been doing shorter tests. Like, for example, a few days ago, we had a 211-second test, which is pretty much like 3.5 minutes. So sometimes they run them for the entirety of like the 6-minute burn that they go through when they go into orbit, but sometimes they just don't need that much data, and so they run them for a shorter burn. And I think this one was one of those. That was a shorter one.
Yep, and of course you see in the top left, the team over at McGregor also keeps track of how long each of them are, so you can see what fired when, and even, again, rewind back in the live stream to see them. And then to finish off the support queue here, Bideford with the $25 super chat saying, what are the odds we are launching tonight? Anyone have an idea? If I had an idea, I'd be buying lottery tickets, not watching launches. I guess technically 50-50. It goes or it doesn't.
I mean, I think the most frustrating, but I guess technically true thing you could say was, I mean, Falcon 9 and this mission will launch when it launches. So SpaceX obviously wants to try to get it off the ground tonight, but they also wanted to yesterday and the day before and the day before. So but honestly, taking one more look back up at the skies again, the skies do look a lot more forgiving, and hopefully the radar and the winds are showing similar data to back up how my gut is currently feeling. So I think tonight has been their best chance all week. So hopefully they can go ahead and pull it off.
My gut is feeling like if this keeps delaying, I'm going to need Pepto-Bismol. But anyway, as we see there, some of the forecasts and the radars there, especially for the higher altitudes. Also, it bugs me that even Space Launch Delta 45, even this weather radar loop that we see calls it LC40. It's Slick 40. Anyway,
I mean, I think I saw some paperwork along the lines of that launch complexes now on the Space Force side are now technically Launch Complex 4041, and the actual space name in the nomenclature has been dropped. I could be wrong, but I thought I saw paperwork in there that said that they are technically now LC40, LC41, LC37, and so on and so on. I could be wrong. Somebody please fact check me if they can. But still calling it LC40 sounds wrong. You are right.
Yeah, so we need Harry Stranger in here immediately to make sure that 36 has the correct nomenclature in front of it. And Spaceboat with the $20 super chat throwing down a launch blessing. Thank you. I think we could use it at this point with this particular mission. Also, worth noting, when we were talking about Crispy, apparently, it says, fun fact, my last initial is P. So Crispy last initial is actually P. So anyway, about 21 and a half minutes to go here. By the way, Max, for people that want to go see this, what direction should they be looking for tonight's launch?
Depends on if you are north or south of the launch pad. But once the rocket is in the air, now that we are in full nighttime, it should be pretty obvious where the rocket is, considering all you have to do is just find the artificially made man-made sunrise coming up over the horizon. So the rocket is heading directly east tonight since it is off to a geostationary orbit. So the view should be similar, weather pending, whether you are north or south of the pad, also depending on how far away you are relative to the launch complex. Under clear conditions, you can see launches all the way across Florida, all the way down to even Naples, albeit it'll be very, very, very tiny on the horizon compared to what you can see here. But cloud cover seems to be one of the big pains in the behind this evening, and also it has been for the past week or so. So if you are closer, you have a much better chance of seeing it. But overall, it is heading east, so theoretically there should be an even amount of viewing, whether you are north or south of the launch pad, which is nice because Falcon 9 likes to fly either northeast or southeast more often than not nowadays. So it should be even split for everybody.
And what we should also be seeing evenly right now is the T-minus 20-minute, 20-second vent. Perfect timing, Max, on extending that answer. And there we go. We can see it, which means LOX chill down is underway. So that means that RP1, Rocket Propellant 1 kerosene load is complete on the upper stage, and now they are chilling down all of the lines to anticipate the super-cooled liquid oxygen that will be loading into it next. This process takes about 4 minutes, and as a result, you'll see it getting super frosty and venty, which is why we call it the best vent, even though it's technically a chill down, and it's kind of just the residual of things getting cold in Florida's hot environment. While we're talking about the trajectory, this one is interesting in that we see it looks like a deorbit that ends up in the Pacific Ocean near Mexico. Elliot was wondering when and where can we see the deorbit burn? Because I know some missions, not this one, Europe gets quite the show from stage 2 passivating.
Yeah, definitely not this one. The deorbit burn will probably be rather shortly after the deployment, right? And by that, I guess I should probably say it might be like an hour after. That's shortly enough. That's the reentry, by the way. So the reentry happens there. south of Mexico in the Pacific Ocean, but that the orbit burn will happen probably over the Indian Ocean, because it's sort of on the other side. You lower a little bit the orbit, and then after you go all the way around, then you re-enter over the Pacific. It's sort of like, I guess, like Starship launching out of Boca Chica, right, from South Texas, and then it goes all the way around, and it actually re-enters over the Indian Ocean. So the same thing sort of happens here, where the orbit burn is on the other side of the globe, and then it re-enters over there. So one thing is that the orbit burn, probably not a lot of people will see that. It might actually be in complete daylight around there, so it will probably be very, very hard to see it. And then the actual re-entry will be sort of in the Pacific Ocean, as we saw there. So probably not a lot of people will see that either, unless you are very close to the coast down there in Central America. So that's my complete guess. But yeah, when probably around an hour, maybe less after deployment, but it's probably going to be again over Central Indian Ocean, eastern coast of Africa, or things like that, and it's probably going to be full daylight in that area. So probably not a chance to see it.
Yeah, it's a bit of a shame with that. It's got to be the right orbit, the right time, the right conditions to get
Yeah.
the crazy spiral pinwheel look over Europe or wherever you're viewing from tonight. Let's see. Here was one that I was trying to ask earlier. Slick40 was asking, SpaceX has been yeeting Falcon 9 rockets from Slick40 for a while now. Max, do they plan to refit it for Starship?
Not Slick 40, no. That will remain a Falcon 9 launch pad for the foreseeable future, as it is currently the busiest launch complex in the world, and not to mention the busiest in SpaceX's arsenal in terms of being able to launch Falcon between the 3 pads they have here, or not here, I guess here in the U.S. technically, but they have 2 here in Florida and 1 at Vandenberg Space Force Base in California on the West Coast. So Slick 40 will stay with Falcon 9. The launch complex that will be split between the two for a period of time is going to be LC-39A, because obviously you have the big black fixed service structure there that has been supporting Falcon 9 crew launches for about 5 years now and has been there since the very early days of the space shuttle program in the early 1980s or late 70s when that pad was constructed. And obviously you have that gargantuan Starship launch tower right next to it. So that is the only launch complex currently set to be splitting the duties between both rockets. And then if you want to go farther south towards Slick 37, that is going to be a bespoke pad for Starship with multiple launch complexes and catch complexes as well. So at the moment, I guess TLDR, coming back to Slick 40, that will stay for Falcon 9 for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, it very much seems like if they want to do more Starship, then they have other options. Of course, we know 37, we know 39. Potentially, they had looked into something over at 49. So that's always an option in the future. And we'll see what they end up doing. But for right now, again, obviously, we're waiting for that first Florida Starship launch. Hopefully soon, TM. And we'll make sure we get in the air soon as well to continue tracking the progress on Starship at the Cape. So make sure you stay tuned to all of the NSF socials as well, because once we do finally get to do that and the weather cooperates for us, I'm sure you'll see some photos dripping out onto all of the social channels. All right. About 15 minutes to go. Again, the 20-minute event has stopped, so liquid oxygen load underway on stage 2, RP1 and LOX continuing on stage 1 at this point. May see if you need to go into your records for this one, Alex, but Angry American was asking, do we know what the fairing flight record is?
Oh yeah, we actually do know about that one. So the fairing halves have actually flown more often than the boosters. The one that currently holds the record is serial number 185, and it has launched 33 times. So right now the booster record is beaten 67 with 30 times already, but the fairing that holds the record for most flights actually has flown even more times at 33. And just like beaten 67, you might remember from a few flights ago, it carried a crown as, a sort of, it's sort of like the king or queen, whatever you want to use, right, of the fleet. So it carries this crown and everything on top of its number. Each of the boosters have their own sort of little numbers on their sort of structure and everything painted on it. And so they also painted that crown. The fairing half that I just mentioned, serial number 185, also has that crown as well on top of its number. In the case of the fairings, those numbers are located sort of at the bottom of the fairing halves. So it's like 185, and then on top there's like a little crown painted on it. So it's really cool that, you know, it's not just the boosters, but it's also the fairing halves. For this mission, we know that at least one of them has flown for 15 times, and we think it is serial number 191. So another one of those that, you know, it has flown many times, just like the booster. This booster has flown already 22 times. It's gonna fly for a 23rd on this flight. So definitely lots and lots of reuses that they get from this hardware. I mean, the only thing that gets expended at the end of the day, is just that second stage there that you see under the fairings. So it's something that they just can pump out really quickly and keep launching pretty much 3 or 4 times a week.
It's unbelievable at the rate they're able to do that. Yeah. And to be able to keep track of the fairings, of course, they all have the little crowns on it, as you mentioned. I absolutely love that touch on them. Now, Max, we had a poll running, and we had over 1,200 people voting in the poll for what shot they want to see you attempt tonight. And somehow, 1,200 of you managed to create a 50-50 split. Normally,
That's
YouTube will
amazing.
be like 50 to 49% to show that one edged out just a bit over the other. Nope. Dead on 50-50 exact. So, Max, do we have an idea of what the plan is?
I think I might attempt a streak tonight. I think it might look pretty cool with the clouds that we have in the area, and the fact that it's going to a geostationary orbit. From our perspective, means it's going straight east, but also the actual arch is going to be pretty narrow. So I can get it fitted in between a full frame 24 millimeter size image. So I think I might try that tonight. Haven't gotten a streak in a while. Glass is clean. And hopefully, and honestly, it's not too humid either, so there shouldn't be any dew spots or moisture spots anywhere on the lens. So we'll try. Hopefully, not famous last words. But I think I will be attempting a streak shot tonight, and then get it edited and shown on stream while we can. Hopefully, pretty quickly, because streaks can take a bit to edit, especially if you have any dirt or loud pixels anywhere in your image.
Yeah, thanks for rubbing it in during the commentary break. We were talking about one of my favorite shots I took that had a bad lens that wasn't fully clean. But anyway,
I wasn't trying to rub it in. I was just trying to. I was just. I was keeping it about my glass. But thank you, Sawyer.
yeah, it's all right. Anyway, there are definitely people that take cleaner shots than I do of streak shots, and they're all available as prints on shop.nasaspaceflight.com. I mean, my favorite still is Max's right there. We were talking about this one as well during the break. The one over the communications antenna there. I absolutely love that shot. And it's
Yeah, it's probably one of my personal favorites as well.
It's so good. And you can even see where the vapor cone was in it. And then, of course, we have all of the other amazing shots in there of Falcon and Atlas and Starship, of course. And if we're talking for the Cape, you see Falcon Heavy. There's booster landing shots. There's a Falcon Nebula shot. We've got a couple different flag shot options. There's one that has the fairing, and there's also a flag shot version that has a capsule. One shot by Max, one shot by me. So you could check those all out at shop.nasaspaceflight.com and get them as either a metal print or a poster for your wall. It'd be cool to see them in like college dorms now, because if these were a thing when I was in college, I would absolutely have them all over my dorm. Just saying. We are now 9 minutes and 20 seconds to go. Max, just let me know when I need to let you go, because I know you got to set all the settings for that shot as well.
You know, I do still have to plant that camera down because I didn't really have a chance to get it aimed up between all the delays and not knowing what to do at that point. And also, I was waiting for the poll, so now might be a good time now at just T-minus 9 minutes. So think I might do that now, and I will see y'all hopefully on the other side, and hopefully a good flight. Come on, Falcon 9.
Let's go, Falcon 9, do the thing! And Max, will see you and talk to you afterwards. So at this point, as you mentioned, now under 9 minutes to go. Fingers crossed that the weather holds out. Alex, any update on the weather?
Yeah, weather was still a watch item as of a few minutes ago. Let's see if everything goes good with the weather. Like, it clears, they see there's a chance and things like that. Still counting down, 8 minutes, 20 seconds to go. Right now, they should be approaching the point where they start chilling down the engines on Falcon 9. They load a little bit of that liquid oxygen through the pumps to make sure that they are conditioned for flight and make sure that there's no cavities or anything like that. They get fully filled. Speaking of fully filled, there will also be wrapping up load of the kerosene tank on the first stage as well. So that'll be another one of those things that they will be ticking off as we proceed here in the countdown. But yeah, so far still counting down, still going for this. Let's see what they do. Maybe we'll get to the same sort of outcome that we were the other day, where they go to 1 minute and then, they call it a day. But we'll see. We'll see.
Yep. Earlier, we were talking about Kiko, who's one of the people that works on launches at SpaceX, with the tweet saying SpaceX yells at clouds as they were hoping for the clouds to clear. So that was one of the things they were watching as part of the weather throughout the day. It has not been a lightning issue, at least this time, or lightning watches or warning as we've seen the last couple of attempts. We have seen steady state wind warnings throughout the area, but we'll see if they're able to get Falcon 9 finally off the ground tonight. As you just pointed out, Alex, that engine chill now underway. This is getting exciting finally. And again, for those people just joining in as we reach the end here, I know time for this one again. Alex, can you give a brief summary of what the payload actually is tonight?
Yeah, the Nusantara Lima is a high-throughput satellite for communications for Indonesia for the company called Pacific Satellite Nusantara, and it's going to be providing over 160 gigabit per second connectivity. And so it's going to be one of these, again, 6 metric ton, really huge satellites that are going to be in geostationary orbit. Falcon 9 will be launching this into a geostationary transfer orbit, and then the satellite itself will be using its own electric thrusters to be able to position itself into that final geosynchronous orbit. Now, there's another thing as well. This satellite was originally built for another whole different purpose and a different company and a different country and everything. And it was originally going to be what was called a GSAT satellite. However, the company pulled out of that agreement, and so Boeing, the manufacturer of the satellite, decided to just sell it to another company. And so PSN, Pacific Satellite Nusantara, just took this satellite and said, "Hey, you know what? Let's launch it. I want to use it. I'm gonna buy it for you, and then modify it a little bit here and there, and I'll use it for my own sort of business, I guess." So yeah, this was originally built for a whole different thing, and then they were using it, I guess, for this purpose of providing connectivity to Indonesia. So again, one of those things that we see often in spaceflight, that sometimes one thing that you were thinking was going to be used for one duty, one sort of thing, it ended up being used for a whole different one. So
Yep.
yeah, it's one of
And
those
this,
things, right?
and this joining a fleet of other satellites for Indonesia that have been launched,
Yep.
also helping after one of theirs was lost earlier. I mean, this was a little while back, launching on a Long March 3B that failed. So
Yep.
hopefully completing more of their network.
And they are not unfamiliar with Falcon 9 because they have already launched at least 2 other times satellites from this company on Falcon 9, including the PSN-6 satellite, also known as Nusantara Satu, and they also launched recently, just a couple of years ago, the Satria satellite as well. All 3 of them also being communication satellites. So definitely not not the first rodeo, if you will, with Falcon 9.
That is true, but Falcon 9's rodeo continues right now with strong back retract. You see the clamps going away from underneath the fairing halves up at the top there, and then the strong back leaning 1.8 degrees away from the rocket. That will throw all the way back at liftoff, but for now it's enough to just get out of the way for that initial launch blast that it will experience hopefully 3 minutes and 33 seconds from now. And again, at this point, the concern still remains the weather as the watch item for tonight. For the launch itself, as for downrange, for those wondering, this is an easterly launch because it is going to geostationary transfer orbit. So that means a shortfall of gravitas is located downrange, ready to hopefully catch the booster, or land the booster on it, I should say. And this is B1078 that you see on your screen on its 23rd, or 23 or 4. How does the dashes work? This is 23rd flight, right?
Yeah, this is a 23rd flight. The number goes up when it lands.
Yeah. And for those wondering about the fairing halves, Doug is downrange to set to pick those up. As Alex was mentioning earlier, the only part of this vehicle that is thrown away is the second stage. And at this point, stage 1 LOX load is complete. So we are getting close to finishing wrapping up propellant load on the vehicle. Within the next 45 seconds or so, we should hopefully get notification that all of the tanks are filled, and then they will begin the gas closeout line. And of course, Alex, if you have any updates, please interrupt me at any point.
Yep, if something critical is said, I'll yell it just in case. But yeah, still counting down, T-minus 2 minutes. Should be wrapping up liquid oxygen load on the second stage. And that has just happened.
There we go. So LOX load done. We are just about at a fully fueled Falcon 9 here as we get ready for what will be the gas closeout. And there you see it on your screen right now, purging the lines of any remaining propellants or anything else in those lines ahead of launch that could either damage the strongback or catch fire as it launches. Lots of different things that they watch out for there. 90 seconds to go. At this point, the events that we should see coming up will be the vehicle entering startup, at which point the onboard computers will then take control of the countdown. That means all the onboard systems will monitor the vehicle, and then if something is wrong, it's the vehicle that calls the hold, not a person. Of course, the weather is still monitored by people, but we are at 1 minute to go. Falcon 9 entering startup.
Falcon 9 is in startup.
There we go. Tanks are also going to pressurize to flight levels, and in just a couple seconds, we will hopefully get a go for launch from the LD if all is go.
Go for launch.
There we go. They're going to try. 40 seconds to go. So at this point, they are going for the launch attempt. 30 seconds to go. In just a little bit, we will see the Rainbirds activate, which is a water deluge system at the base of the rocket. That will be followed by a green flash, which is ignition using a substance called TTAB, triethylaluminum triethylborane, and then hopefully we see launch. 10 seconds to go. And of course, once it launches, we will be quiet and let you listen to the sounds. But for now, let's wait for those Rainbirds and that engine ignition and liftoff of Falcon 9 and Nusantara Lima on its way to geostationary transfer orbit. Go Falcon 9, go Nusantara. could hear the VAB squeal. That's what we love to hear as Falcon 9 continues its push to orbit. So far, the vehicle has now passed through max Q, that is maximum aerodynamic forces that are pushing against the vehicle on its trip uphill. And so far, everything looking good. There are 90 seconds into flight. The next events that will be coming up will be 3 events in rapid succession, starting with MECO, main engine cutoff. That will be followed by separation of the first and second stages, and then ignition of the Merlin vacuum upper stage engine to continue the launch. Look at the colors of this liftoff tonight. Absolutely gorgeous glow from that as it punches through the clouds here. This is being tracked by Gauge using one of our Cape cams that we have that you could see on Space Coast Live 24/7. And now we get to the
Wow, look at that.
blues.
Changing to blue.
Oh, I love that bluish color. So now coming up next will be those 3 events in rapid succession. So we should see that light go away shortly. And waiting for MECO. There we go, main engine cutoff. And now we'll see the stages separate. And now on the right side of your screen, there is the full-sized Merlin vacuum engine igniting. And everything looking good at this point. And now at this point, the booster will be heading for the drone ship. So B-1078 deploying its grid fins and now aiming for a short fall of gravitas located in the Atlantic Ocean, awaiting a chance for the booster to land atop it. So far, Alex, that looks good. Next up will be the separation of the 2 fairing halves, exposing the satellite to space. As Stage 2 now reaches 100 kilometers and counting in altitude, as Stage 1 also reaches 100 kilometers in altitude and counting.
There should go the fairings shortly. And boop, there we go.
There we go. You can see how tight those margins are for a satellite that big inside the fairing, but there we go. And now it's worth noting for this one, Alex, normally we're used to with Starlinks where it will see the landing and then SECO, second engine cutoff. This one, the second engine, I believe, cuts off before the landing, right?
Yep, it's a shorter time to get into orbit. Mostly because the payload is not as big, but it's going further away than the Starlinks. The Starlinks is like 16 to 17 metric tons, whereas this is just 6 metric tons. If we were going to low Earth orbit only, the first stage will have plenty of performance to come back to the Cape and all that, but it is not going to low Earth orbit, right? This first burn is just putting it in that parking orbit in low Earth orbit. But then there's another burn that will push it away and will push it even further away, and that's the whole reason why it's actually going into orbit earlier, because it is not as heavy as, again, a Starlink satellite launch is like carrying an extra 10 metric tons, 11 metric tons, right, of mass to orbit. But instead, that means they're going to be reserving a little bit of propellant on that second stage to then push this payload out there into geosynchronous transfer orbit. So, yeah, that's, pretty much, I guess, orbital mechanics 101. What you don't spend now, you may have to spend it later.
Yeah, that's a good point there. I like that analogy. But yeah, and in regards to also for a Starlink, there's usually a second burn that's about 2 seconds long. This one is actually closer to 35-ish seconds long.
Yeah, it's like comparing, small bump and just a little of a push there with that second burn on the Starlink missions. This one is actually carrying this way out there, right? So yeah, it's a huge difference in the remaining performance, I guess, in that second stage.
Yeah, Stage 1 already at 158 kilometers up. Meanwhile, Stage 1 is now back below 100 kilometers. The trajectory, once they separate, it still has momentum going forward. So at that point, it will continue to rise until it reaches the highest point in its trajectory, known as the apogee, at which point then it starts falling back down. So right now, it is continuing that fall, but what will help slow it down is the entry burn, which should be starting any second now. And there we go. We can see the animations up. One engine. And then we should see 2 more engines ignite. And there we go. You
There we
see,
go.
once it gets rectangular, it is absolutely all 3 engines running.
As you used to say, I don't hear you say this very very often lately. Fighting fire with fire.
Well, yeah, most of the launches lately haven't gotten to this point. They stopped the count on the pad. So
That's true.
there we go. Yes. Anyway, fighting fire with fire to slow itself down. There you go, folks.
Yeah, it's true. It finally launched. It kind of seems crazy that we're finally seeing it not just launch, but now landing. It's now going through that atmosphere. You can see there
Yep.
that re-entry heat.
Yeah, everything through those grid fins there as it gets the thicker parts of the atmosphere. Absolutely beautiful. And those grid fins that you see on the screen, I call them like waffles because that's what they look like to me. Those will start steering and maneuvering as it gets into the thicker parts of the atmosphere when they become more useful. So especially as we get right before touchdown, you will see them going quite wild as they work to steer the vehicle onto the center of that drone ship, which you can see the light of it on the left there.
And keep an eye on the right-hand side because that MVAC engine will be shutting down in just a few seconds from now. It's very close now to overall speed there.
Yep.
So let's see what's first, the start of the landing burn or the shutdown of the MVAC engine.
I think it's just going to beat it. We'll see.
Yeah.
Again, the light from a shortfall of gravitas, the drone ship on the left of your screen there. And we should be starting that landing burn, which is a single engine.
And landing burn wins.
There we go. Just by a
There's
couple
Sicko.
seconds. There is second engine cutoff. So the satellite in its current parking orbit. Meanwhile, stage 1 hoping to park on the deck of the drone ship. You can see those grid fins doing the steering. Landing like deploy. And touchdown. B-1078 landing on the deck of a shortfall of gravitas after another payload is delivered to orbit. Add that -24. So,
There we go.
beautiful. And now, what is the timeline remaining? Because we will stay live through satellite deploy here. What is the remaining timeline for what we can expect here?
Yeah, so the second stage and the Nusantara Lima satellite are currently in a coast phase. They're going to be doing a relight of that MVAC engine on the second stage at T plus 23 minutes and 13 seconds, and it should last for about 45 seconds or so to put the Nusantara Lima satellite into a geosynchronous transfer orbit. About 4 minutes later, then they'll deploy the satellite into that orbit, sort of separated away from the rocket. So yeah, just a few more minutes to go. It's one of those things as well that, these missions are not like Starlinks where, it's usually like an hour or so until payload deployment. This is a lot earlier. Or for example, like the other day with a transmission from Vandenberg, it was like a couple of hours after launch when they deployed the satellites. So yeah, it's one of those things where these missions are really quick after launch. They are done very quickly after. Yeah.
And while the launch has been going on, you guys have been absolutely spectacular with the support. Really appreciate it. But we have the replays coming up too. So stick around. You'll get to see all the launch replays as we wait
Wow.
for the actual...
Have you seen that?
What was that?
I think that was storms on Earth.
Was that lightning?
Yeah, I think that was lightning.
We'll have to see.
Wow.
Hopefully they flip back to that view looking up at the satellite.
Yeah.
I saw that flash. That's why I wasn't sure if... Those, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Look at that.
that is really cool. Yeah, that is storms on Earth seen from space.
And yeah, some people mentioning yes, that's also the moon.
Moon.
Moon. Some other
Oh,
people as well asking about the cylinder, like the cylinder thing that we can see on the satellite. That's one of the deployable. There we go. That one sort of over the speed. That's one of the deployable solar arrays that they have. It's one of those rollout solar arrays that they use now.
I remember back when those were a novel concept. I was in an office at the
Wait,
press
hang on.
site at the Kennedy Space Center, and they were
Maybe that was not
displaying.
it. Sorry, I think that's actually an antenna.
It
I was
probably is one of those mesh antennas that goes out, but
yeah,
still,
I was
regardless,
confused. Yeah,
I remember with the Rosas going into an office at KSC and someone had a sample of it. It was so small. They're like, but soon we'll be able to roll these out at massive scale, like on the ISS. I'm like, okay, yeah, sure, cool.
yeah.
They're
I was
now on
confusing
the
it
ISS.
with other satellites that do have now that kind of solar rollout solar arrays, especially from Boeing. Now they have some of those. But there we go, some replays already of the launch. Look at that.
Absolutely beautiful. This from our fleet cams down at the port atop Rusty's at the port. Great place to grab a bite to eat and also watch a launch and watch all of the SpaceX recovery ops at the port there. This is my favorite part from this as it poked through the clouds, the way it lit up the sky. Again, we call it an artificial sunrise. Now you see why. Just even the effect with the clouds on it, it's spectacular. Oh, I love that view. Also, shout out to Kevin Michael Reed's dad, who got a chance to actually hopefully see the launch now tonight. I know he's been trying the last couple nights. There we go. It's so good. Let's watch it again. And you can see it coming behind those cranes, which are typically used for SpaceX fleet operations there, where they will take the boosters after they come in on the drone ship. They will lift them up, fold up the legs, and place them on transporters back onto Cape Canaveral Space Force Station's gate there, and work their way back typically to Hangar X for inspection and refurbishment ahead of its next flight. Meanwhile, these absolutely spectacular views from the port, again, only on the Space Coast do you get a view like that. Just soaking it all in. Beautiful colors, and again, we've got more replays coming, but that was beautiful. Here's from the second camera that we have at the port. Of course, the ship decided to go right in front of Slick 40. But that just means the ship is going to have a rocket rising behind it, that's all. And from the ship comes a Falcon. There it is. Beautiful. Again, sometimes the launches where there's clouds can make it very difficult to see the launch, but at night you really get that glow, so it tells you exactly where it is, makes it beautifully clear. This is from one of our robotic cameras that we have at the Kennedy Space Center Launch Complex 39 press site. There is that the definition of orbital sunrise in a way here. Obviously, orbital sunrise is more meant in space because you see 16 sunrises and sunsets every day as you circle the Earth. But I guess the Space Coast gets 2 sunrises and 1 sunset. Does it count as a sunset if it keeps going up?
Wouldn't be sunrise.
Well, yeah, it's a sunrise, but then as the light fades, it wouldn't be a sunset because it's still rising. So it's a sunrise and the sun continues rising.
Okay, I can save you here by saying, well, technically then it goes over the horizon, so it's sort of a sunset too? It's just the very tiny light of the MVAC engine, though.
Yeah, it's a stretch on that one, I know. And there we go. This is another close-up view of it rising over the tree line. But yeah, regardless, it's quite a sight to see. If you've never seen a launch from anywhere near the Space Coast, highly, highly recommend adding it to your bucket list if you're any kind of a space fan.
You want to know something funny from this launch is that we are 11, 12 days into September, this was the 6th launch of the month. So that means they're averaging 1 launch every 2 days.
Yeah, it was supposed to be 6 launches in like 8 days, but
Yeah.
this mission decided to, well, not so much this mission, the weather decided
The
to not
weather.
cooperate.
Yeah. So if it hadn't been by the weather, they could have probably done even faster than that.
Oh, they absolutely would have done faster than that. Yeah. And then this is the hand tracking from Max.
Hello.
Hey, we're about to watch and probably listen to your replay here.
Just in time.
Let's listen in as the rumble hits. Nicely done, Max. Especially tricky with the clouds, but still well done, sir.
Yeah, one of the most visually stunning parts of a launch where there's somewhat of a cloud layer around is the brief moments right before it punches through them, and that the light bounces back off of the cloud and lights up the entire body of the rocket. And it happened twice tonight. The first one was a bit unexpected on my part, and then it happened again, and I made sure to have the area above the plume in frame when that happened, and it worked out. So yeah, nighttime launches can always be special, and if there's a bit of a cloud layer mixed in there, I guess just for a bit of visual spice, it can also add to it.
Yeah, as much as we like beautifully clear skies to see the whole thing, there is something about the occasional punch through a thin-ish layer cloud where you can still see the rocket through it that just, oh, chef's kiss.
Indeed.
And this was the, as voted on by you, the viewers, this was Max's streak shot as well from the launch.
Yeah, camera was set up about 20 feet away, so I ran over at about T-minus 40 seconds and fired it up. And, it's not my best work for sure. And also the arc being very narrow can be kind of, I guess, not that thrilling of an image on my part. It still looks really good, and the drama there with the clouds certainly adds to it. Still, I'm happy it came out. A little bit dirty on, oh, there we go. Stretching it up. Oh, what was that?
This is wide Falcon.
I guess.
Falcon wide.
Oh, he's widening the. Oh, okay. Hey, you know what's crazy on that? Like even stretched out, it doesn't look like abnormal. Dare I say? Because that's how streak shots can look if you're from a more perpendicular perspective to the pad and the trajectory. So, yeah. Either way, it was still an absolutely beautiful one, and honestly, we are just glad that it is off the ground.
How does that still work stretched? It shouldn't, but it does.
It really does, and it's kind of spooky.
But well done, and great voting from everyone in chat. Over 1,200 of you on that vote. And yes, we see the VAB. We did hear the VAB squeal. I know people in chat will still say, "Oh, I didn't hear it. It's fake. It's a myth. It's the moon landing isn't real, and the VAB squeal isn't real." But promise you, they both are.
It is not a myth. No.
Go back and rewatch sometimes in these launches. You'll hear it usually about 45 seconds into flight. But I do need to, if we could... Words, okay. We can keep an eye now on the screen. Hopefully, we'll get visuals back for the burn, which should be coming up in about 2 minutes. So, Alex, how long is this burn, and what's the purpose of it?
Yeah, it's not too long. It's not like the one that we just saw to get into orbit, but it's not, as we mentioned before, it's not like the ones that they do for Starlinks, where it's like just, blink and you miss. This is a lot longer. So if my math is correct, it should be 44 seconds long. So it should be coming up in about a minute and a half from now. It will do two things. The first one is it'll raise the orbit, the other end of the orbit, out to close to geosynchronous orbit. It will actually not get all the way out there because the satellite is too big for Falcon 9 to efficiently do that. It doesn't have enough performance, but it's good enough that it will send it out there at the very least, as close as it can. Another thing that it will do is it will also lower a little bit the inclination. So right now, that orbit that you can see there, that white orbit, it's roughly 28 degrees in inclination relative to the equator. It's going to be turning that a little bit down. Probably, if I were to guess, closer to 25 or something like that, based on previous missions with similar payloads of this size. So yeah, that burn will sort of do both things at the same time. Again, it should be happening hopefully in less than a minute from now, a little bit over, after past T plus 23 minutes. So we'll see. Some of these times usually vary a little bit, and the length of the burns also differ depending on how much remaining reserves of propellant the second stage has. So we'll see what happens there. Because sometimes if they have a little bit more performance, they use it, right? It's always good, especially with these kind of missions.
It's worth noting all the times that we're given from SpaceX are subject to change. It's just their estimations versus the actual numbers from the vehicle itself.
There we
But
go.
there it is. There's the green flash of a T-tab. There is the reignition. And so far, everything looking good. Speed increasing
Yeah.
quite dramatically. There should be approximately 20-ish more seconds left in this burn still. Of course, there's no sound from the vacuum, but the view, spectacular. About 7 seconds if their original timeline stands true, but as mentioned, it could be a couple seconds more or less. It appears a couple seconds more.
There we go. Shutdown.
And that white stuff flying away is ice. That's not anything to worry about, right?
Yeah, it's fine. The reason why they can get away with a longer burn here is because actually what you want is to get as close to geosynchronous orbit as possible. And I just heard nominal orbit insertion, so that's great. That means the payload is now in the correct orbit. Now what remains is actually separating it. So there's gonna be a few minutes here where they're gonna be waiting for all of the pressurization systems and whatnot, all of the tank stuff to get after this burn get quiet, so to speak, right? And then they'll be able to release that payload. But yeah, this satellite at the end of the day, it's gonna be at this sort of geostationary orbit, which is roughly 36,000 kilometers away from Earth at 0 degrees inclination, essentially an equatorial orbit around the equator, 36,000 kilometers away from Earth. So the closer that you get to that orbit, the better. So if you burn for a few more seconds, that means the satellite will not need to burn as much propellant, and that means it'll be able to reserve that for its own orbit, different adjustments and things like that during its life, which means it's going to last for longer. So the customer will be very, very happy if that were to be the case, right?
Yep. And as they get ready for satellite deploy, Max, I know you need to deploy off right now and pack things up there. So thank you for joining us.
Pleasure as always, everyone. Thank you very much for coming to hang out tonight and enjoy Payload Deploy. We'll see you guys next time.
Always appreciate Max Evans rolling out. You see his info that was on the card there. We're still a couple of minutes away now from the deploy. And again, that white stuff building up there, it's not a leak or anything. That's just ice, correct?
Yeah, that's gaseous oxygen that turns into ice. once it goes out to the vacuum of space and everything, because it's vented out and there's like physical processes and whatnot that cools it down and it turns it into a solid, and so it forms like little blob there next to the bleed valve, as it's called. And yeah, that's normal part of the operation of the engine. And there we go, more venting, so that means the ice gets knocked off. I
Yeah, so
always
when
love
it's
that.
when it's that small amount, it's totally fine. When it keeps
Yeah.
growing and growing and growing, that's when
That's
you're
a
in
leak.
Florida for a launch.
Yeah, exactly. We saw last year. We saw last year during a Starlink launch. There was a whole lot more ice, and it was coming from the wrong side of the engine. Right? It was coming more from like towards the right here on this view, sort of where that foil thing, that mylar protection is located. That was not good. This is coming from the right side, from the correct location that it needs to come out from. So yeah, I need the right quantity.
Exactly. Sorry to throw you under the bus with that one. But we're now about 20 seconds away from deployment, finally, of the Nusantara Lima satellite for Indonesia. I'm sure they will cut to the top part. Alex, how does the separation mechanism work on this? Is it just a push? Is it a spring?
It's probably spring loaded. Usually, most of these are like that. Very rarely you see some of these being like frangible nuts, as they are called. Essentially, just pyrotechnics that release a bolt and then the satellite flies away. Sometimes it's just most commonly used nowadays is the other type where it's just springs essentially.
Did it deploy or did they hold off on the deploy?
I don't know. They're showing now a promo video for whatever reason for Pacific Satellite Nusantara.
Yeah, per the original SpaceX timeline, deployment was T plus 27 minutes and 25 seconds. Although, as we pointed out, that second burn did go a little bit longer, which isn't a bad thing, but it could change
Yeah.
the rest of the timeline. But
Either that or they got the times wrong, which is usual. To be fair, it's not unusual.
Yeah, Tom Jones agrees. Yeah, at this point, we'll have to. We'll see. We'll keep an eye out here to see if we get the deploy. In the meantime, let me take this moment to thank some people. We wait for that. Angry American was teasing a membership giveaway if we hit 2,000 likes by Faring Sep, which he then super chatted again later, saying didn't hit the challenge this time. NSF by far the best in spaceflight coverage and definitely the most entertaining. Well, thank you for that. That's the goal, is to commentate and to also entertain and inform. And then still gifting one Red Team membership anyway as well. So thank you. Apparently, it sounds like we are now moments away, that extra kick in the burn, adding a couple seconds ahead of separation. All right, let's see.
I'm on the side that they probably just put the wrong time on their timeline, because that usually tends to be. And I want to mention one thing here. That ice, if it were a leak, say that it is a leak, doesn't matter. The satellite is already in the orbit that it needs to be. As long as it deploys, second stage already did its job. So
Yeah. And it's worth noting, again, the speed drop, totally fine. You see there the altitude increasing. That's typically what happens. As the altitude increases, the speed will drop. And it will fluctuate at this point as it goes through its orbit. Once it's in geostationary and it's synchronized with the spin of the Earth, it's a little less dramatic, shall we say.
yeah, they're just trading speed by altitude.
So that's totally normal, totally expected, nothing to worry about. Already, by the way, 700 kilometers above the Earth now, just 30 minutes after launch. And it's still at 31,500 kilometers an hour. It's still, even if it's dropping, that's still pretty fast.
Yep. I mean, the moon is still, I think the orbit of the moon, it's like the speed is like 2 kilometers per second still. It's quite fast. even though it's way far out there, right? So yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So we're going off of that soon TM, which is a trademark SpaceX.
There we
and there
go.
it goes. As we say that, Nusantara Lima on its way to geostationary transfer orbit to finish its final geostationary orientation soon.
Ooh, here comes the sun.
Do. It's all right. And that looks like a
Wow.
picture-perfect deploy.
Another successful flight for Falcon 9. That is cool.
Yes, and live from New York, it's Saturday. No, that's the PSN Group's logo, by the way. Oh, I love the sun rising over the Earth just there. You could see, just the orbital line there. That's the satellite.
This is what I said. That the orbit burn will be in daylight. So there you go.
Oh, and the stage is even drifting to the point where you can see it better. Oh my gosh, this is stunning. Yes, we know you are SpaceX, and we know you're at SpaceX on X. We wanted to see that. We wanted to see the shot. There we go. That was beautiful. By the way, Crispy gifting 20 more Red Team memberships through all of that. Crispy, your generosity tonight has been spectacular. Thank you so much. And Alex, it's finally off the ground. Despite what we see, it's off
Finally!
the ground. Yes.
Finally. Let's see now if they get to that Cygnus. Hopefully, if not on Sunday, maybe on Monday. We'll see. But definitely looking forward to that one because, usually ISS missions, I like them better because, it's also going to be an RTLS launch. So, booster return to the Cape. That's always cool.
Yes, we'll see if they can do that turnaround on Sunday. Keep updated with the next spaceflight app and the NSF socials so you know when that launch happens. And of course, you'll be able to hit the notification right here on YouTube to know when we do go live for that one. And we had Max on earlier. So Alex, thank you for joining. I saw your card was already up there. And Kevin Michael Reed been the one pushing the buttons, pulling the levers as we watch this launch replay that Max shot. Absolutely gorgeous. I am Sawyer Rosenstein. I have been your host for this evening's broadcast. Thanks for sticking with us for all 3 broadcast launch attempts. Third time is the charm, as they say. Appreciate everyone sticking around. And how about next time we launch it on the first attempt? Sound like a plan? Cool. I will see you all for that next attempt. Until then, have a good one, everybody.
And here we go. We have liftoff. Propulsion continues to be normal.
R68 chamber pressure looks good.
Traveling up. Roger, the planet.
Water towers fly!
Tango down to nominal.
Fighting downside speed off. Bring in speed off. It's orange!
Orange 25! Oh my god! Oh my god!
Decollage. Put that in the big bag, Signal.
343 unfolds to go.
Indeed.
We rise together, back to the moon and beyond.
This methane will be igniting in the flare, correct?
Yikes. You read? Sure. We don't need any more of these.